What's up, guys? It's Tony here. Welcome back to Man Cave Studios for a hastily made MLB second half predictions video. Now, I know a lot of people have their different predictions about how the second half of the season is going to turn out, but first of all, can we just admire how much better the games are this year than in previous years? I mean, I was originally a critic of the pitch timer. Like, I hate that they change everything. Every year they seem to add some new rules which make understanding baseball a lot more difficult. Like obviously mound visits and stuff like that. It's becoming hard to keep track of some parts of the game, like mound visits, like the disengagement rule. What counts as a disengagement? What doesn't? And it definitely makes it harder to become a diehard fan of the sport, but the fact that the games are now on average half an hour shorter, I cannot stress enough, is wonderful. Because there were times, and they've also started the games earlier these past two seasons than they have in the past. Like, I know that they used to start games at 7:10, 7:20, usually during the week, and then without the pitch timer, there's a chance that, well, most of those games would go to like 10:30 at night, um, which was ridiculous. And if you have work or school the next day or anything, then obviously that kind of puts that a little bit off the table unless it's a really good game. But say your team is going, or even with like the extra innings base rule, that was another rule I hated at first. But I've come to enjoy the fact that that is part of MLB now, because now these extra inning games aren't going to the 16th inning on a Tuesday night, so you're not forced to go to bed in a thrilling 14 inning game at the top of the one of the divisions. Like, most of these games are over by 9:30 anymore. The games that go to extra innings might go to 10:30 still, but at least you can stay up for those knowing that, hey, the next inning, there's a pretty good chance that this game's going to be over. It's not very likely that any of these games will go 16 innings anymore. And it's definitely not as often as they used to. There was a game a couple of days ago that the Phillies were playing in that went to 12 innings, I think, and it was over by like 10:20, I believe. Um, so just great, and especially if you're going to games and day games. I mean, I went to a New York Mets game last year and it was hot out that day, and I was even in the shade for that, which was great. But um you know that went, I think, 3.5 hours, that game. I think it ended like 7-6 or something. Whereas I was at a Yankees game last week, and the vlog's actually on this channel if you want to go check it out. um and that game lasted, I think, 2 hours and 45 minutes. Wasn't There weren't too many runs scored in that game. I think it ended like 6-3. But it was quick and it was over. And it was hot out that day too, so it's like, and we weren't even in the shade for that one. We were like directly in the sun. So that game was actually over in exactly 2 hours and 27 minutes. So it's just been a great year so far for baseball. I hope people are getting invested in the sport, especially because it's really the only sport on cable television anymore, now that MLS has taken their product and made it impossible to watch. Now baseball is really the only thing on TV, so it's good that baseball is a little more watchable this year than it was in previous years. The thing is, now they've got to leave it alone for a little bit, right? They can't be adding many new rules that complicate things even further. So we'll see how it goes. We'll see, what happens these next few seasons if they wind up getting more of a fan base back. Hopefully, ticket prices will get a little lower again. I know that's wishful thinking, but it's impossible to go to games anymore when it costs $100 for a family of four to sit in the nosebleeds. So hope for lower ticket prices at some point, hopefully. But anyways, in today's video, most of what I'm going to talk about, aside from the 5 minutes I just wasted talking about the MLB in general, I'm going to be discussing my predictions for the second half of the 2023 MLB season. So it's been a good start to the season for a lot of the teams that we kind of thought were going to have good seasons. And heading into the All Star break, which is when I'm recording this, I'm on the night where the MLB stops for the All Star break. The home run derby's tomorrow. Um, the current division leaders are, as predicted, the Braves and Dodgers in the National League, but also the Cincinnati Reds have broken out. And then in the American League, you've actually got a little bit of a weird scenario brewing in the American League. A lot of teams I don't think many people would expect. The Rays, I would kind of expect, just because they've been good for the past few seasons. But I don't think anyone expected them to get out to the start that they did at the beginning of this year. I mean, it was one of the greatest starts in MLB history. And then you've also got the Texas Rangers, who, yeah, they made some big signings, but a lot of those signings have been out injured for a while. And then the AL Central, I mean, it was really up for grabs at the beginning of the season. The Cleveland Guardians are currently leading it, but the Minnesota Twins are only half a game behind. And honestly, every team in that division except for the Royals has a good chance at winning that division because it's, the Guardians are leading that division now with a 500 record. So it's really anybody's game. So there are a few surprises, but a few consistencies. My surprise really is with the wild card teams, especially in the National League, where you've got the Marlins, the Diamondbacks, and the Giants, who have all had suboptimal seasons in recent years, except for the Giants. The Giants are kind of on the decline right now, but they weren't, they didn't make the playoffs last year, I don't think. The Diamondbacks, they were good a few years ago. They had a few rough seasons, but now they're back. And then the Marlins uh, haven't made the playoffs too often in the last 20 odd years, except for the bubble year, really. Um, and maybe a few other times, but the Marlins are currently leading the wild card, 3 games up in on the Giants for that first wild card spot, 3.5 games into the playoff picture right now. And then in the American League, you've got a lot of teams that people thought would be leading divisions at this time of year, which is kind of a surprise. You've got the Orioles, who were on the rise last year. I wouldn't say it's really surprising that the Rays are leading the Orioles, but they're doing it with a record better than two of the division leaders at the moment in the American League, the Rangers and the Guardians. And then you've got the Astros, who are, again, it's surprising that they're a wild card team and not a division leader. And then Toronto as well. And then the Yankees and Red Sox both sit right outside of playoff picture. So pretty competitive in the AL East, which is really why I hate the division format in baseball, because a lot of these teams should not even have, they just shouldn't even be in a playoff spot. They shouldn't be really even in contention. I mean, the Guardians are in a playoff spot right now, and they would be 4.5 games out if they weren't the division leader. They would be 4.5 games out from a wild card spot. So you know, it's just another, like, the Central teams have always been pretty bad, at least in recent years. But it just goes to show, like, even with football as well. Like, that's the reason why I hate the NFL playoff picture, is because almost every team gets in. Or every you've got to have one division leader get in. So that team could be 7-10, and they could still get in if their division is really bad. Whereas teams that are like 10-6 but are in a competitive division in the same year might not make the playoffs, or 10-7 or whatever, with the games added and all that. But anyways, here are some of my predictions for the second half of the year. So, right now, the Atlanta Braves lead the National League East, and they lead the entire MLB, and they lead the entire National League, obviously. Um, Coming into the All Star break, they've won 8 out of their last 10. They're 60-29. They're the first team to 60 wins. I think early in the season, a lot of people would have thought that it was going to be the Rays and then everybody else. But the Braves now enter the All-Star break with the best record and the best win percentage in the MLB. The most wins, the least amount of losses, the best win percentage. So, um, I think that the Braves are going to hang on the second half of the season and they're going to carry the best record in MLB, giving them home field advantage throughout the playoffs, assuming they don't lose in the NLDS for the second year in a row. But I think that they're going to be the first team to lock in a playoff spot. They're going to be the first team to lock in a first round bye, and they're going to lead the entire MLB in record going into the playoffs. The second team that I think is going to also have um, the first round bye, not have to play in the wild card series, is the Los Angeles Dodgers, who weren't leading the National League West for most of the year. It was mostly the Diamondbacks, but the Diamondbacks have been losing a lot recently, and the Dodgers have been winning a lot. And this is actually kind of unfortunate for the Dodgers heading into the All-Star break. They're on a 4-game win streak, and when you're winning, you don't want to stop winning. Um, so either way, I mean it's tied right now, but the Dodgers have it on win percentage. I think the Dodgers are going to have a better record than the Diamondbacks in the second half, and they're going to wind up with that other first round bye, with that other wild card bye. And then the NL Central. I know that the Reds have been really good this season, but the Brewers, I feel, have a really good chance of taking that division. They're only a game out, moving to the American League. I think that the number one team in the American League at the end of the season is not going to be the Rays, who currently have it. It's not going to be the Texans, who are the other, or the not the Texans, the Rangers, who are the other division leader. I think it's going to be the Baltimore Orioles. That's right. Their first season in the playoffs in what has it been, like 9 years now? 8, 9 years? I don't know. I don't even remember. 2016 actually, I think, was the last time they made the playoffs. So, 7 years ago. So either way, the Orioles, they've won 5 straight. The Rays have been losing a lot recently. They just got swept by the Phillies after losing a series to the Mariners. They lost the last series heading into the All Star break against the Braves, which obviously Braves are a better team than those two, but and they at least took a game against the Braves, which they didn't against the Phillies. But Baltimore's been catching up, and they were 5 games out, and before that they were like 7, 8 games out early in the season. But they've been catching up ever since, and now heading into the All Star break, they're only 2 games out, and they're tied in losses with the Rays. They have 4 less wins, so it's really just a matter of how many games they've played at this point in the season. You don't know those 4 remaining games if they could win all of them or what they'll win and lose, but I don't even really think it matters because they've got a second half to play. The Rays have been losing a lot recently, so I think it'll be easier for Baltimore to catch up and win the American League East and then take the first seed in the American League and earn a first round bye in the wild card format. I think the second team to earn a bye will not be the other current division leader in the Rangers, but it'll be the other team that's 2 games out and has been winning recently, the Houston Astros. And it pains me to say that as a Phillies fan. But the Astros are another team. They've been winning a lot recently. The Rangers have been losing a lot recently. And it's really quite comparable. Like Baltimore, they're 2 games out. They've won 6 out of their last 10, chasing a team who has lost 7 out of their last 10. So is Texas. Texas has also lost 7 out of the last 10, and Houston's only 2 games out from them. So I think that Houston comes back second half of the season. I think they win the AL West and take that last wild card round bye. And then in the Central, which is kind of up for grabs. I think that the Twins are going to pass the Guardians. They the Guardians have played one less game right now, but I think that the Twins will come back the second half of the season, and they're gonna do it, I think, with a losing record, because you don't have to have a winning record really anymore to win your division, because as opposed to only playing or playing 72 games a year in division, now it's a lot less because the amount of games you play against your division is down from 19 to 13. So it's kind of easy to see, especially with the strength of some of these other divisions like the American League East, a team winning the Central Division with a below 500 record, and I think the Twins are going to do that. I don't know when the last time it was that a team made the playoffs with a losing record, but I think it's going to happen, and it's just quite a disappointment to one of Toronto, New York, or Boston, because those are the teams that deserve a playoff spot a lot more than the Twins or the Guardians do. But at least two of those teams are probably not going to make the playoffs. Either that or the Astros or Rangers. So, and all those teams I think deserve to make the playoffs a lot more than the Guardians, and they're probably going to finish around 10 games above the Guardians heading into the postseason. So, uh, I guess we'll see, but this is why I really hate the divisional format in the MLB playoffs. I think it should just be the top 6 seeds from the National League and the top 6 seeds from the American League get into the playoffs. So that way you don't have the possibility of a near 500 or below 500 team making the playoffs, while teams that are 10 games above 500 don't. So, so what I have for seeding for the National League, I have the Braves and the Dodgers as the first two, as I said before. The third seed is going to be the Brewers, the team that doesn't get the first round bye, who I have winning the NL Central. The fourth seed and the first wild card team, I think, is the Diamondbacks. Out of all the wild card teams, I think the Diamondbacks have had the strongest performance in the first half of the season. They've been losing a little bit recently, but I think generally they're still the best team that isn't a division leader right now, or is at least tied for a division lead. So I think that the Diamondbacks will take that first spot going into the postseason. The second spot in the wild card and the fifth seed, I think, goes to the Giants, who have had a really strong performance in the first half. I think more than a lot of people really expected. They have decent pitching. Uh, they've been hitting all right. They're not, blowing the brakes off of anybody or whatever, but they're still a pretty good team. So I think that the San Francisco Giants get the other spot. And I think that the last team in, not the Reds, the Miami Marlins, who have also been a team that has had a great first half of the season. They just beat the Phillies, who are coming off sweeping the Rays, and who had a 13-game road win streak heading into this series. And I think that the Marlins will get in over the Phillies and the Reds because they have such good pitching. They have one of the best, well, the best hitter in all of baseball right now. So I think that the Marlins, this is a year, barring 2020, when they finally put all the jokes aside and they finally make the playoffs, leaving the Reds and the Phillies outside of the playoffs. Now, the team I think that is the most vulnerable in this list is the Giants, because I guess they're kind of a, not talking about the playoff bracket, they're kind of a wild card team at the moment. But I think that the Giants, I mean, just thinking about the Phillies, right? The Phillies don't have the pitching that they did last year, which is why I don't think they'll make the playoffs. I guess we'll see about the Reds. I think that you could swap the Reds with the Giants and it would make sense, but I don't see the Phillies making the playoffs over the Brewers or the Reds or whoever their NL Central opponent is, and I don't have them beating the Marlins, especially after this week's series. So I think that the Phillies, who sit half a game out right now, are not going to be in the playoffs. And you've also got a few other teams like the Padres who are coming up now, who didn't start the season well but are starting to find their stride. But the Phillies, the pitching has just not been there this season, and I know a lot of people are hoping for another magical run, but I don't think it's going to happen in Philadelphia. Just because, the pitching's not there. And the pitching was there for them in the playoffs last year, and so was the bullpen, and they don't have much of that either this season. So I think that the Phillies, after making the run to the World Series, missed the playoffs this season. In the American League, first two seeds, Orioles and Astros. Number one, Orioles, second, Astros. The third team is whoever wins the AL Central, which I have as the Twins. And then the fourth seed, I think, is kind of indisputable. If I have the Orioles winning the American League East, that only leaves the Rays to win the first wild card spot. I think that's pretty much a given. That's obviously the best division in baseball, and I think that the Rays aren't going to slide so much that they lose that position to the Texas Rangers, who I have as a fifth seed. So I think that should be the order if the Orioles take the lead in the American League East. After the Rangers at the fifth seed, who I have losing out to the Houston Astros, the last team I think is going to make the playoffs is the New York Yankees, who have lost a little bit at this point. I think it could be the Red Sox or the Yankees or the Blue Jays. I mean, they're all in competition for it, but something just tells me the New York Yankees are going to be the final team in the playoffs. Whether it's luck or they go on a run down the stretch, I think that the Yankees will get it together. They'll get back in a playoff spot and they'll make the playoffs as the last seed in the American League. After that, it's anybody's guess. I think that the Yankees beat the Twins with ease, or whoever gets that sixth wildcard spot is going to beat the Twins. I think that the Rays beat the Rangers in the American League, which would set up I guess the winner of that series would play the Orioles. So Rays versus Orioles in the ALDS, as well as Astros versus Yankees. For old time's sake, at that point, it's really anybody's game, but I would say the Rays, uh, you know, I would say that they figure it out. I mean, especially if they have pitching on their side, which they haven't recently. And I think a lot of the reason they've been losing is because they haven't generated runs recently, but I think the offense will come back. This is really just a collective team slump right now. Um, I don't think it'll come back enough for them to hold off the Orioles, but in the playoffs, anything can happen, and I think they have the better pitching rotation that could get them through, which pitching is really everything in the playoffs. They have a great bullpen, and I think the Astros beat the Yankees again, so that'll set up a Rays versus Astros ALCS. That's just a tough one to predict, but I I I don't know. I guess we'll see. In the National League, the Brewers versus the Marlins. I say the Marlins win that. The Diamondbacks versus the Giants. I would have the Diamondbacks. Just they're the better team. Um, so the Diamondbacks would play the Dodgers. The Marlins would play the Braves. Or no, yeah, I think that's right. Or I don't know with this weird playoff system anymore how it works. I know because they don't do the lowest possible seed. But the teams that I have in the league championship series are the Braves and Dodgers, who were the first two seeds in the National League, and then the Astros and Rays. Um, we'll see how things shake out if that's even possible with the seeding. Although I think the Astros would play the Twins versus Yankees series, so it does make it possible with the Rays as a 4 seed. And then I think we have either a repeat of the Astros versus the Dodgers or the Braves. I think this is going to be the Dodgers' year overall. I think this is finally the year, besides the COVID year, when they finally win a World Series. But again, I don't really count the COVID year for anything. It was a 60-game season. So I say the Dodgers get to the World Series. It In that case, it would basically be a rematch pretty much any way you can spin it, unless the Rays wind up playing the Braves in the World Series. But if you have the Astros versus either of those teams, it's a rematch of 2017 or 2021. If you have the Braves versus the Astros 2021, Dodgers versus the Astros, it's 2020, or it's 2017. If it's against the Rays, it's 2020. So a lot of potential rematches. I think the MLB will kind of stick with that because it's been pretty predictable the last few seasons, and I don't think it's going to change now, except for the Phillies getting to the World Series. That was kind of an exception. But anyways, that is going to be it for this video. Thank you guys very much for watching. Let me know if you agree or disagree with my predictions in the comments below. And peace out, broskies.